Tonight, a man has been charged with sexual offenses after using fake identities online.
On August 23rd, the RNC received information related to the use of fictitious identities, social media platforms, and concealment to arrange sexual acts.
The RNC has arrested a 32-year-old man for sexual assault following a complaint from an adult male.
Those type of files take a lot of preparation. You need people with experience.
The Crown currently has 17 murder or manslaughter trials before the courts, which doesn't bode well for overworked prosecutors.
In advance of hurricane season, the government plans to launch a new website that will become activated when there's an emergency. I'll have more on that coming up.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. Our top story tonight, police have arrested and charged a Paradise man they say used fake identities on social media to lure another man and sexually assault him. 32-year-old Marcus Hicks is a volleyball coach and a substitute teacher. He's accused of posing as a woman online and using fake names to try to arrange sexual acts. The RNC says Hicks was posing as Isabella Ricci with the username Bella Ricci 4 and Corinne Smith with the username SmittyCore15, and they want anyone who communicated with those usernames to come forward. Well, police arrested Hicks yesterday and he appeared in provincial court today. At a news conference this afternoon, RNC Constable James Cadigan said the alleged victim is an adult male.
You cannot consent to a sex act in a case where you're involved in engaging in a sex act with a person being led to believe it is another person. So there's a level of deception there, and you cannot consent in that situation. So as I've mentioned, we believe that the information we received, it began as the use of social media platforms, potential fictitious accounts being used, and certainly concealment in the arranging of these sexual acts that occurred. And as a result, we've reached this stage in the investigation where we have laid a charge of sexual assault. And, consent is a big piece in this process.
Well, neither the English School District nor the Education Department would comment on the charges. The NL Volleyball Association also wouldn't comment on the investigation into Hicks, who was a head coach with the East Coast Volleyball Club. But the organization did say it has safeguards in place to help protect people, including giving guidance to athletes and coaches on how to recognize and report problematic or illegal behavior. Meanwhile, there are supports for sexual assault survivors. Sandra McKellar is with the End Sexual Violence group in St. John's.
What I call our flagship in terms of the most used service is our support line. And sometimes when people phone, they ask, they say, this happened a while ago, can I still call? Yes, anyone who's experienced sexual violence, it is available to them 18 plus, right? Because of it's adults. If it is someone below that age, we let them know that we will need to reach out to the appropriate agencies. But it is to listen, to believe, to provide resources and support.
Well, in other news, if you feel like you've heard more stories than usual about homicides in the news lately, you might be right. Public prosecution says there are 17 homicide cases before the courts in this province, and that's the highest number in at least a decade. And all of those cases mean more work for the lawyers prosecuting them. Ariana Kelland reports on their concerns.
A familiar sight, police cruisers stationed outside a crime scene last month. This, the death of a 65-year-old woman, makes 17. The accused, a 14-year-old boy, will be the 17th person facing a homicide-related charge before the courts in Newfoundland and Labrador. The oldest case, Craig Pope, first convicted in a 2017 stabbing death. After a successful appeal, he's now heading back to trial. Possibly the highest number of cases ever, and each one requiring 2 prosecutors per file.
Those type of files take a lot of preparation. You need people with experience.
The Director of Public Prosecutions couldn't say if this is the highest number ever, but acknowledged it is high in comparison to other years. An internal government briefing note lays out the numbers. 10 cases a decade ago, dropping to 6 in 2015, then steadily climbing from there.
It's going to be very difficult for our membership to keep up with the increased file load.
Patton has been advocating for two things from government: an increase in salary to be comparable with other provinces, and more Crown lawyers to handle the increased caseload. In March, he got part of that. Government announced money to bring salaries more in line with Nova Scotia.
I commend government for increasing salaries, but we need more resources as well, and I've always advocated for that to do the work. The people we have now are working as hard as they can, and they're trying to keep up. But long term, there's going to be a sustainability issue with doing the heavy file load we have. It's been doubled over the last 10 years with the same amount of lawyers.
These recent crime stats back that up. Between 2021 and 22, there was a 6% increase in the intensity of crime. It has risen 21% in the province over the last decade. Other provinces are experiencing similar issues. Manitoba promised to add 25 Crown prosecutors. In New Brunswick, they say they're adding 50% more to their Crown's office, warning that without more prosecutors, less serious cases may be at risk. In a statement, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Lisa Stead, said that's not an issue in Newfoundland and Labrador. Ariana Kellen, CBC News, St. John's.
The Justice Minister was non-committal today on a timeline on when the new penitentiary will be built. It was first announced in 2019 with promises for construction to be completed by 2022, but shovels haven't even been put in the ground yet. But government has conceded inflation is already driving up the cost.
Probably will take longer than a couple years to build, but they're still working on design and structure and costing and things like that. There was money in the budget, in the 2023 budget, to continue that work. I think it was about $7 million. So obviously that's not going to get it built this year, $7 million, but the work needs to be done to make sure that it's the right and appropriate facility.
Well, HMP was the topic of conversation on The Signal today. We'll hear more on the state of the province's largest prison later in the show. Well, for nearly a decade, Liberty Consulting has kept a watchful and critical eye on NL Hydro, especially when it comes to the controversial Muskrat Falls project. Now, the American firm says it will end its advisory role with the Public Utilities Board, and it's taking a parting shot at Hydro on its way out the door. Here Now's Terry Roberts reports.
In true Liberty Consulting fashion, the company's resignation letter to the utility regulator this week pulled no punches. President John Antonook said he's been concerned for some time about the pace at which Hydro is moving when it comes to establishing a reliable backup for Muskrat Falls. It's taking so long, in fact, that Antonook no longer believes he can keep his team of advisors together long enough to see the process through. So Liberty is leaving as soon as the PUB can find new advisors.
Well, I was very shocked, and I think it's very unfortunate for the ratepayers and the people of the province.
Liberty's departure is bad news, says this longtime energy critic. Ron Penny says the PUB, with Liberty's support, has aggressively challenged NL Hydro, formerly Nalcor, exposing troubling cost overruns, schedule delays, and consistently questioning and challenging Hydro in quarterly reports about Muskrat Falls and its integration into the power grid.
They've been very independent, and it turns out very accurate in terms of their criticism of the project.
There are reliability concerns about the Labrador Island Link, which brings Muskrat power to Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. A backup will be needed. Right now, that backup is the thermal generating station in Holyrood, an old, heavy polluter, which will require major, costly upgrades. Hydro is also projecting increased demand in the coming years as more people switch to electric vehicles and switch out their oil-fired home heating systems. Liberty believes a new gas turbine is the answer to the reliability question and is recommending a prompt analysis of this option, despite the move towards decarbonization and new rules that may one day force the closure of such a facility. If proven feasible, the timing for installing such a resource may have the potential to avoid hundreds of millions of dollars from extending Holyrood. NL Hydro's CEO was not available today. However, filings with the PUB show a new combustion turbine is one option being considered by Hydro. But in a statement to CBC, Hydro said it will not be rushed into any decisions. We are insistent that we do the appropriate work to gather all evidence necessary to make well-informed and prudent decisions that benefit the people of this province. Hydro intends to honor the lessons of past decisions as we look to the future, and rushing, in our view, is not prudent. Hydro does not yet have the evidence to prove that any specific solution, such as a gas turbine, is the right solution and would not proceed with an application without a fulsome evidence package, as is our legislative requirement. Meanwhile, the Public Utilities Board says it will start the search soon for new consultants. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
It's been a bit of an unsettled day today, still hot and humid thanks to this technically tropical air mass that we've been sitting under for the past couple of days. Spinning showers and even some thunderstorms pretty much our way most of today, but really starting to get going at the moment. Some heavier showers with embedded thunderstorms there, as you can see some of the flashing lights for the western portion of the province. Earlier today we did see some lightning further east, but right now we do have just a few showers moving through. Speaking of heat, another record breaker for a good chunk of the province, a good chunk of the island today. Not the case up across Labrador, though. Single-digit temperatures, 22 is what Happy Valley Goose Bay registered as a daytime high. That was just after midnight. Your temperatures, you know, have been steadily declining all day today, currently sitting at 7 degrees. And as we head through the next couple of days, we are going to see a bit of a cool down for areas through central northern peninsula where you are in onshore flow, but those temperatures will warm up as we get to the weekend. I'll get into the details when I come back.
World Energy GH2 holds public information sessions in Stephenville, talking all about the wind turbine projects for the Port-au-Port and the Codroy Valley. I'll tell you what people in this area had to say about the project.
Well, the latest variant of COVID-19 is working its way across Canada, but Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says it isn't a major concern for this province. The province's top doctor is encouraging people to keep their vaccinations up to date, but she says there isn't a specific rollout plan for fall boosters just yet. Public Health is still waiting to find out which boosters will be approved by Health Canada before rolling them out.
What we know right now is that our flu vaccine program, hopefully we're starting that sort of mid-October. That's generally when we start that. We hope to be able to roll the COVID vaccine program out with the flu vaccine program. And so we're, so, you know, it'll probably be mid-October-ish. We're hopeful that we'll be able to do both at the same time. But, you know, more details to follow.
And we'll have more with Dr. Janice Fitzgerald on the rollout of those new vaccines and the current state of COVID-19 in Newfoundland and Labrador. That's in about 20 minutes on Here and Now. Well, we are now hitting the peak of hurricane season, and today the provincial government announced a new website meant to provide the latest information on weather-related emergencies. Here and Now's Sarah Blackmore reports.
Hurricane Igor and Hurricane Fiona both struck in mid-September, leaving communities without power or worse. In anticipation of this year's hurricane season, the government has launched a new emergency preparedness website. It's meant to give the public up-to-date and, more importantly, accurate information.
But we want people to know that the information that's on this webpage is the most accurate and is the most up-to-date, so people can be confident that it's accurate and that it's true and that they can trust it. You know, there's benefits to social media, but we all know there's a downside to it as well, and we all know that there's rumors or information that gets out before it's confirmed, and in a disaster, that can lead to serious consequences.
The website will be housed on gov.nl.ca, and it will look like this. It will break down the steps of an emergency before, during, and after any major weather event. It will also advise of road closures, the availability of emergency services, and of course, weather conditions.
To really start to think about, you know, what they have on hand when it comes to when it gets to that point. And most of these things can be found in your home as we speak, right? Food and water, medication, and flashlights. For the most part, we all have this. So I think it's just a matter of taking the time now on the heels of this particular event and put it all together in some semblance of a kit.
But for now, if you go looking, you won't be able to see the website. It will only become available in case of an emergency. Sarah Blackmore, CBC News, St. John's.
The provincial government will soon decide if a mega wind energy project will go ahead in Western Newfoundland. World Energy GH2 wants to build a hydrogen to ammonia plant and the hundreds of wind turbines it'll take to power it. The company is currently in the environmental assessment phase and is looking for public feedback. Here and Now's Colleen Connors explains why some critics feel there isn't enough time to get a grip on the magnitude of this venture.
For a few hours, World Energy GH2's office in Stephenville was a community hub this week. Residents, town officials, and construction company owners stopped in to find out more about the company's plan.
Well, I wanted to know where the windmills were going to be, and I wanted to tell them that I really support the windmills. I mean, they're all over the world. They don't cause cancer, they don't cause asthma, they don't cause problems with the water.
World Energy's goal is to build hundreds of windmills on the Port-au-Port Peninsula and the Codroy Valley, machines that will generate 1 gigawatt of renewable power at each site. That power will run a hydrogen ammonia plant the company wants to build at the port in Stephenville.
I really don't know what to think of it all yet. I do know it's going to be a big thing economically for the area, so it'll be exciting if the longevity of jobs, families, if this is going to be a part of that. So there's, like I said, it'll be interesting to see what happens, right?
Economically, I mean, for the economy of just not this area, but of all Newfoundland, I think it's amazing. I mean, it's going to restore Stephenville to its heyday, as far as I'm concerned, by bringing people in, new industry, with the airport being changed and everything else. I think it's an opportunity that we cannot pass up.
The company's environmental impact statement, all 4,100 pages of it, is waiting for provincial government approval. It's a long, technical document that anyone can look at here and at 8 nearby libraries. There's dense detail, maps, mock-up pictures like these, and a long list of things that could be affected, like water, rare plants, birds, wildlife, and sound quality. It's too much for people like Greg Mitchell. He says the approval process is happening too fast, and there is not enough time for him and most other residents to get through all the material and understand it.
This is not a mega project, okay? This is a giga project. This is 13,000 watts of electricity, which is 6 times the installed capacity that we're presently using in our homes and in our industry here in Newfoundland.
Mitchell believes the solution to this is a full federal review with a panel of outside experts on environment and industry.
This has to be assessed nationally. It has to be assessed internationally. I mean, it's ridiculous to me that this doesn't get a full environmental review.
No one with World Energy GH2 would talk to me on camera at the expert information session. But they did say in an email statement that the project is not undertaking any activities listed within the Federal Physical Activities Regulations, so it should not undergo a federal assessment. And that the provincial environmental impact statement process is thorough and comprehensive. World Energy GH2 will continue to hold these public information sessions up until October 11th. Then things are more in the hands of the provincial government, with their final decision expected on October 31st. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Stephenville.
The Association of New Canadians in Labrador West held a celebration to welcome some of the newest Canadian citizens last week. But one of those new Canadians certainly isn't new to the area. He's worked at the Iron Ore Company of Canada in Labrador City for more than 5 decades. Here Now's Daryl Din brings us his story.
For many new Canadians, the process of becoming a citizen can take a few years. For Frank Scringer, a fixture at the Iron Ore Company of Canada, it took more than 50. Scringer says it was time to get his citizenship. And how does he feel about it?
Good.
He's a man of few words, but after arriving from Slovenia in 1967, Stringer began working in the pellet plant at IOC. He's been there for 56 years. The company says that makes him the longest working employee at the mine. Why does he enjoy working so much?
Enjoy. Good job. Good job.
And it's a job he's not planning on giving up anytime soon.
We ask him if he's going to retire, and he quickly cuts off the conversation because he doesn't want to talk about retirement.
What keeps a worker like him going?
It provides well, as others spoke here today. IOC's provided well for this family. I'm second generation. My father worked in the pellet plant with Frank as well. So for us, there's a lot of encouragement from Frank, and hopefully it motivates others to continue on and be a part of the company.
And Frank, any advice for new people working at IOC?
Well, they should start working more.
Daryl Din, CBC News, Labrador City.
Well, now to some sports news. At 6:15 tomorrow morning, the men's national basketball team will take the court against Serbia. The two are set to meet in the semifinals of the World Cup of Basketball in Asia, and it'll be one of the biggest games in Canadian basketball history. While St. John's is a long way away from Manila, local basketball player Carl English knows full well the trials and tribulations of Canada's national men's team. He was on the team from 2003 until 2016. He offered up his thoughts on the team's success.
But again, this is not an opponent to be taken lightly. As Alexander Walker says, if you're giving it to me, I'm taking it.
To me, it's no secret. I mean, you've got the next generation of Canadian talent there that's really coming together at the right time. I feel this has been brewing for the last 8 years. I felt when I was coming to the end of my time with them, I was like, this is a medal. This is no longer a team that will qualify. This is a team that will win a medal. And then they finally, that's a real tough game against Spain, and they pulled through it, showed a lot of heart, character. And then obviously I think that's a huge weight lifted off their shoulders, because this is 20 plus years in the making to try to qualify for the Olympics. So now that is done, they went out and had a fabulous game today against Slovenia, which knocked down a giant. So I think right now they're definitely in contention for a medal. I think it's huge personally for not only this province, but for the country. I mean, you take it I remember when I was a kid, I'm watching Steve Nash on CBC, because we got 2 channels, right? So when they covered those, you're sitting there in front of the TV and you're glued to it. Now with social media and all the access that these guys are getting and the broadcast right across the country, I think it's just going to take the next generation through the roof. I believe the Raptors had a big part of that as well, but now I think Canada basketball's grown, and you'll see both combination of that and the sport's just fabulous what it does, and you can see behind me the camaraderie and things. That's what I miss the most. But for me, I think the sky is the limit for the growth, because it is a cheaper sport to play than hockey, which dominates our country as well.
Yeah, I know he played with Team Canada, and he was like really, really good in Newfoundland and really great player.
It's awesome. He's teaching us great stuff here, and it's just, I'm honored to be coached by him.
It's very good. He is a very knowledgeable basketball player, and he can teach us a lot about the game.
I read his book. He's a great player. He has a very inspiring story as a Canadian basketball player, and he's just fun to read about, and he's fun to get coached by.
They're always asking questions. You'll get some of them to come in there that will read my book. I give all the kids a copy of my book. So then they go through it, and I'll always ask them, did you read it? But the first thing I do is I open up the pages. Then they can see who I played against. When they see Kobe and these guys in there, like, you know what I mean? All of a sudden I have a little bit of credibility. So it's funny to see where it's at, but especially when Spain was playing, like I have all these texts from the Spanish people, because I was one of the best players over there when I played. So it's kind of taking me back down memory lane again, and you know, I try to let these guys know as much as I can. I try to show them a thing or two every time I can, but I'm getting old now, so it's not the same.
Michael Wren was 9 of 9 for the entire...
It's always hard to watch. Like it was funny, on Saturday I watched the game with my son and my wife, and she was losing her mind. I was like, is this how you scream at me when I'm playing? I said, I wouldn't want to be around you. But like, you're watching it there and you're looking at different things, and especially for me, because I played in Europe for so long, so you can see they're changing their game to adjust to the world game. So for me, I'm looking at the little intangibles and things that they could do better, and I'm just thinking and tweaking. But for me, I'm just happy for their success. It's proud to be some part of it for all those years, and then to finally see them coming to the top, it's amazing.
We've had, parents reaching out in terms of what kind of supports, what do I do?
Advice for parents who may be worried about their child's online activities after the RNC arrest a local substitute teacher and sports coach for sexual violence connected to social media.
Well, there's quite a few showers rolling through, also some embedded thunderstorms. We'll talk about what is coming up when I come back.
Another hot one here in the east, at least. Quite muggy out there today.
Yes, it was like stepping out into a warm bath is what it felt like out there. For most of the day, we didn't really see much relief through the overnight either, but take a look at the temperatures this afternoon. Pretty much from Corner Brook all the way across through to Bonavista, not including Terra Nova. You broke a record today, another daily record this afternoon. And temperatures along the southern areas of the island, not quite as warm, still about 19 degrees though. And northern peninsula topped off at 19 earlier today, but those temperatures have since dropped, and much cooler temperatures up across Labrador certainly than we have been seeing. What we've got going on, ridge of high pressure, this cold front here is what has cooled things down, and we still have that tropical air mass very much in place for the southern areas of the island. So you can really see that change in temperatures, the greens being the cooler temperatures and the yellows and oranges being those much warmer temperatures. And they are going to continue at least for the next day or so. We will see some of these milder conditions, not nearly as warm as today, but it will be a little less humid tomorrow. Here's where you're sitting in Humidex values right now. 23 degrees still in St. John's, feels more like 31 with that Humidex. 26 in Gander, 34 is what it feels like with the Humidex. And same thing as you head towards Stephenville. Quite a huge range in temperatures as you head towards Labrador, though only 7, 8, 9 degrees right now, and obviously some much drier air as well. And even in St. Anthony, 10 degrees right now. So definitely a different story depending on where you are across the province. But as we, like I said, heading through tomorrow, we should see a little bit of a dip in that humidity, much more comfortable air, at least as the day goes on. It's still going to start a bit humid, but we will see a return of that humidity as we head into Saturday, even into Sunday, and then that will eventually drop off as well. So we can see that area of low pressure spinning to the south, spinning lots of showers and even some embedded thunderstorms right along with it. Just a closer look. Lots of heavy showers still in there as well. And again, don't be surprised to hear a few rumbles of thunder. If we take a look at the Avalon at the moment, most of those showers or heavier showers are for the northwest Avalon and along the isthmus there. And we're expecting the potential for these showers to continue as we head through the night tonight. As we see this area of low pressure actually get closer, it'll bring more of that instability. Still looking at the potential for some thunderstorms tonight. And that will continue at least through the early morning hours. Up across Labrador, periods of rain, the story along that front, the cold front. And we could be talking about 20 to even 30 millimeters of rain. Some of these showers will likely be heavy at times as we head through the overnight, especially up across the Big Land. 2 to 8 degrees is your overnight lows. Still staying quite mild, though, for most of the island, except the northern peninsula, where you will stay in those single digits as well tonight. A little breezy. Those south winds will be between 20 and 30 kilometers per hour. As we head into tomorrow, we're going to see that chance of showers eventually taper off. Generally cloudy, though, across the island. Still periods of rain, the story for those of you across Labrador. Best chance of seeing the sun will be in the southwestern portion of the province. But again, as we see this onshore flow, it's going to bring some cooler temperatures to parts of central northern peninsula as well. But that is going to allow the temperatures along southern areas of the island to warm up a couple of degrees, 21 to 23 degrees tomorrow. And then as we head towards Labrador, another chilly day. The good news is, though, we are going to see a bit of a warm up as we head towards the end of the week into the beginning of next week. But you are going to hang on to these unseasonably cool temperatures for at least a couple more days. So I'll get into the long range forecast when I come back in a little bit.
Thanks, Ashley. Returning now to our top story, police want parents and guardians to be aware of the arrest of 32-year-old Marcus Hicks, a volleyball coach and substitute teacher who's being charged with sexual assault. The RNC says Hicks used social media to arrange sexual acts. So what should you do if you're worried about your child's online activities? Here now's Arlette Lazarenko spoke with Sandra McKellar of the group End Sexual Violence in St. John's.
Can you speak about the resources that you give to victims or survivors?
We have a number of them. On many occasions when people are looking for information, particularly after such a horrendous experience, whether it is in the immediate past or historical, it's kind of hard. So we have social media platforms, whether it's Facebook or the website, where we have information in terms of how to reach out. We have a 1-800 number. We also have an explanation in terms of the supports we provide, or what I call our flagship in terms of the most used service is our support line. And sometimes when people phone, they ask, they say, this happened a while ago, can I still call? Yes, anyone who's experienced sexual violence, it is available to them 18 plus, right? Because of it's adults. If it is someone below that age, we let them know that we will need to reach out to the appropriate agencies, but it is to listen, to believe, to provide resources and support.
What kind of advice could you give to parents of young children with safety regarding online activity?
Be cautious in terms of the information that we share, to question when it does not feel right, for parents, friends, anyone, to ensure that the people in their lives who they care about know how to access support, that they do believe in themselves, that if something doesn't feel right, it's okay to say, let me check first and get back to you. You know, it can be quite convincing if you're not seeing the person, but I think knowledge is power. We have had, parents reaching out in terms of what kind of supports, what do I do? We talk about having a conversation with your children in terms of not believing everything you hear, about checking with us or checking with someone else that you trust. And when or if your child should approach you in terms of these are some of the things, listening, believing them, and looking at the resources that are available, and timely support, trauma-informed support is helpful.
as we heard earlier in the show, the Justice Minister isn't putting a timeline on when the public can expect a new prison. A replacement for Her Majesty's Penitentiary is well behind schedule. Now, promises of a new prison have been made and broken before. Here's a story from our archives from 2008 when our Zach Gowdy reported on the government's promise to shut down HMP for good.
For 150 years, criminals in Newfoundland and Labrador have been sent here to Her Majesty's Penitentiary to serve their time. But now the province is saying that this prison's time is past. Everywhere you look inside HMP, there are signs of the building's age. Holes in the plaster, missing moldings, and dirt and mold in every corner. There are no janitors here. The inmates are responsible for doing the cleaning. And the cleanest, most well-maintained part of the prison are the cells. This is a cell block in what's called the old part of the building, dating to the late 1800s. The inmates live in cells that are 5 by 9 with a bed, a shelf, a sink, and a toilet. There are about 160 inmates doing time at HMP, living in about 140 cells. In the new part of the building, the cells are a little more modern, but no bigger. We can't show you pictures of the new cells because they are all full. Weekend inmates have a little more freedom, larger common areas with access to a toaster and tea kettle. But those inmates are housed 4 to a cell. Most weekends, every bunk is taken. This prison is crowded, but it's also cramped. This is one of only a few multi-purpose rooms in the prison. All programming from addiction services, domestic counseling, to creative writing have to be done in rooms like this. And of the 3 multi-purpose rooms, this is by far the biggest. This place is falling apart. It's overcrowded, and there are precious few facilities for prisoner programs. The government knows the problems here. That's why Justice Minister Jerome Kennedy was in Ottawa this week looking for money to replace the pen. Even if a new prison is approved, its construction will take years, so it'll still be years before we can close the door on Her Majesty's Penitentiary. Reporting from St. John's, I'm Zach Gowdy for Here and Now.
That was back from 2008. Well, today, CBC Radio's The Signal dedicated a full hour to HMP, past, present, and future. Prison chaplain Jerry Phelan visits HMP twice a week.
This is an inmate newsletter. It's called The Pen. It's produced by Pastoral Care, but it's all the work in it, everything is from inmates and former inmates, but mostly inmates inside. And this particular issue, which dates back to July 2019, was about the new prison. It was when it was being talked about, and what we asked the inmates, and they came through, was to do a brick and tell us in brick form what would the new prison look like. And so they went and outlined their things that they would like to see. And it was, to me, significant that things like fresh air is one of the things they wanted to see in the new prison. Eye doctors, adult education courses, dignity. These are the bricks that the prisoners themselves wanted in the new prison. The prison that we're looking at today offers very little of that, unfortunately. The new prison is brought up. I bring it up. I bring it up to give them hope, to let them know that, listen, I don't want you guys to go there, but I have sat in on meetings and seen the plans for the proposed new prison, and they are great plans. The government has a beautiful blueprint of what a new prison should look like. I don't want these guys to go there, but I want them to know that somebody actually cares enough that hopefully we're going to see something along those regards, where there is fresh air on every range, where there's a weight room on every range, where there's access to visitors so that if it's not by telephone, with a lot more phones on the range, there's internet access, there's Facebook access, there's air, there's bright lights, there's access to the outside. You know, it's not the doom and gloom closed in that we have. So how often do they bring it up? They bring it up to me quite frequently. But, you know, one of the effects of all of today that we're seeing is we have to remember as a society that these people are our brothers. They're your brothers. They're your dads. They're somebody's uncle. They're somebody's son. I deal a lot with the families of inmates. And trust me, they are suffering along with the guys who are inside the institution. They are the mothers who phone me at 11 o'clock at night and say, I haven't been able to reach Dale. Can you reach Dale for me? Is Dale the guy who just died at HMP? They are the ones who are not getting calls and saying, is Dale in the hole? Did Dale do something wrong? And all of these people who are inside being caged as they are today are going to be released tomorrow. They're going to be back in society. They're going to be your next door neighbor tomorrow. And how would you want your next door neighbor to react? How would you want them to feel? How would you expect them to feel if they come out of that situation?
Fall marks the start of flu season, and this year there's a new COVID variant to contend with. But as Dr. Janice Fitzgerald explains, this particular variant is not as severe as the medical community once thought. The Chief Medical Officer of Health speaks with Here and Now's Jessica Singer about COVID and the plan for booster shots.
First, we're going to talk about the new variant that people have been hearing a lot about, the BA.2.86. What do we know about this variant?
So still learning a lot about it. Certainly it seems to have a lot of mutations compared to ones that have been out before, but we know that it is a descendant, I guess, so to speak, of Omicron, much as most of the variants at this point have been. So there's some new evidence coming out to suggest that You know, it may not be quite the issue that we thought it might be, and so it may not be quite as infectious or able to evade the immune system, although that was a concern in the beginning. So we are seeing it spreading a little bit in the country for sure, and you know, as with most of these things, I expect it will increase until there's an equilibrium of some type. So.
Yeah, speaking of that, there have been reports about a rise in cases and positive cases across the country. What are things looking like right now in Newfoundland and Labrador in terms of case counts?
Yeah, so we're certainly, you know, I think that rise is reflected here as well, and we are seeing a slight uptick in cases, but certainly not anything that's of major concern at this point, and not really even as high as what we saw in the spring, say. So our hospitalizations have been holding pretty steady. So, you know, not unexpected given what's happening elsewhere in the country.
Now, going on to the booster, one of the ways that we're told to protect ourselves against COVID-19, what's the plan for the booster rollout this coming fall?
We're still waiting to find out what exactly what boosters are going to get approved by Health Canada, so we're still waiting on that, and hopefully that won't be too long. But once we get that information, then we will have, you know, more be able to, I guess, more definitively talk about the booster program. But what we know right now is that our flu vaccine program, hopefully we're starting that sort of mid-October. That's generally when we start that. We hope to be able to roll the COVID vaccine program out with the flu vaccine program. So, you know, it'll probably be mid-October-ish. We certainly would encourage people, once we announce that fall campaign, we would encourage people to get their vaccination.
Canada is experiencing shorter and less severe winters due to climate change, but warmer weather also brings with it more bugs, many that carry infectious disease. Now, a Toronto mother is warning Canadians to be on the alert for insect-borne infections after her young son fell severely ill. Lauren Pelly has the story.
Mom's right here. Hi, buddy. It's okay.
Catherine McKissick's son Cameron spent a month in a Toronto hospital suffering from dangerous brain inflammation. Lab reports later showed the 6-year-old was infected with Jamestown Canyon virus. It's a rare but rising threat spread across North America by mosquitoes, and one his mom had never heard of.
How do you protect your child from a mosquito?
The family didn't travel this summer, so she assumes her son was bitten right in their own community. McKissock now worries more Canadians could be at risk.
I'm really hoping that they start testing for these things and they start watching for it and studying it a little bit closer.
We actually don't really know how much of these infections are here, and there certainly is a major knowledge gap.
This doctor warns limited testing and awareness means many cases of insect-transmitted infections could be underreported, even though climate change is fueling their spread.
We're seeing, shorter winters that aren't as cold, and basically the expansion of insects that can transmit these infections.
West Nile and Lyme disease are two of the big ones. Once rare in Canada, thousands of cases have been reported in recent years. Surveillance is also ramping up for other diseases. Ontario just began tracking 3 more tick pathogens this summer, all of which can make humans sick. But the province didn't provide any data. CBC News reached out to every regional health unit and found there could be dozens of possible cases already under investigation.
Of course, it starts out that way, and then, what it'll look like 5 years from now, we can only imagine.
Other leg. McKissick's family now uses bug spray, one of the few tools she has to try and keep her kids safe. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Oshawa, Ontario.
Okay, so time for a look at the long-range forecast, and that means looking ahead to the weekend.
We are looking ahead to the weekend, but I first want to talk about now Hurricane Lee. We've been talking about it for the last couple of days and figured we should probably still talk about it. Here is what is the situation. So earlier today, it wasn't even a Category 1 hurricane. It has rapidly intensified through the day today. Now a Category 4 hurricane with sustained winds at 215 kilometers per hour, with winds gusting as high as 260 kilometers per hour. And the National Hurricane Center is expecting the hurricane to intensify even more to a Category 5 hurricane, which we have not seen so far this season. And it's happening very quickly. I mean, 270 kilometer per hour winds. That is an incredibly strong, dangerous hurricane. Expected to stay north of most of the Caribbean islands at this point, but there is still some uncertainty on the track as we get into the beginning of next week, and then eventually into next week as it maybe makes a turn north. Again, as we saw with Franklin, there is a lot of variability in the forecast, and it is something at this point just to watch for the time being. So as far as our long-range forecast goes, as we head into Saturday, we're still looking at that humidity actually making a return. We will see those temperatures into the 20s as you head towards Corner Brook, all the way through to St. John's. In fact, that should be the warmest air. For the Northern Peninsula, you are still hanging on to some of that cooler air, especially up across Labrador as well, as we see our daytime highs somewhere between 7 to about 12 degrees. The warmest will actually be in Lab West, as your daytime high hovers around 15 degrees, but it still will be unsettled. And then as we look into Saturday evening and into Sunday, again, another unsettled day for a good chunk of the province, as we see our temperatures again into the 20s, a little bit warmer up across Labrador as well, but not for Nain. You'll still hover around that 6-degree mark. But the good news is your temperatures will climb. Long-range forecast showing a bit of unsettled conditions as we head into the beginning of next week. Some rain possible on Tuesday as well, between 19 and 20 degrees. So back down around where we should be sitting for this time of year. For central and western Newfoundland, we're looking at rain pretty much Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, with temperatures down to the teens by the time we get there. And then for eastern Labrador, clearing by the time we get into Monday, it looks like. Should stay dry for the weekend, but Monday we're looking at about 17 degrees and some sunshine. And then for western Labrador, same thing with sunshine though. Tuesday, the return of some showers, and look at your overnight lows dipping single digits. So this shot I thought was such a beautiful photo. Sun was just climbing up over the mountains and he captured this rainbow. This is Clyde's photo at Greenpoint Campground. So he was enjoying a lovely morning. Thank you for that. If you have any weather photos that you would like to share with us, you can send them to my Facebook page, but the best place is to email them, and you can do that to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Such an interesting shot with the rainbow kind of disappearing into the clouds. Is that rain?
Yep.
They're on the left side.
That's
I mean,
exactly
clear on
what
the
it is.
right
Yep.
side.
Over the ocean.
Yeah, interesting.
Rainbows are just the sun refracting with the raindrops. So pretty cool.
Well, that's it for us on this Thursday evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good night.